Dear seekers of the unknown, before we plunge into the abyss, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. Only then you will receive our dark whispers in the dead of night.
Digital Phobia. Chapter 1. Digital Whispers. Natan Keller's eyes were locked on the eerie glow of his computer screen, the only source of light in the otherwise dark room. It was late, the kind of late that blurred the line between very late at night and very early in the morning. He rubbed his eyes, feeling the strain of countless hours spent poring over online forums dedicated to the digital macabre. Natan, known in these circles as CipherScribe, was no stranger to internet legends. But tonight, he had stumbled upon something different. Something that made his spine tingle with a mixture of dread and excitement. The post that caught his eye was buried in a subreddit devoted to internet mysteries. Titled only, "Do you remember EchoBack?" The username was a string of jumbled characters and the account was hours old. Natan's curiosity was piqued. He had never heard of EchoBack, and his extensive knowledge of such legends made him all the more intrigued. The post was vague, with a poetic cadence that seemed almost intentional. It spoke of an internet tale lost in the annals of the early web, a story that had been scrubbed from the digital world so thoroughly that all that remained were the whispers of its existence. The legend of EchoBack, it claimed, held a curse for those who dared to uncover its truths, a series of images and riddles leading to a truth not meant for mortal eyes. The post concluded with a challenge. Find the EchoBack, if you dare. Natan's fingers danced across the keyboard, searching for any scrap of information on EchoBack. Hours passed with nothing but dead ends and 404 errors. It was as if the internet itself had conspired to keep EchoBack a secret. Frustration mounted, but so did his resolve. Natan was no stranger to the deep web, and if there was something to be found, he would find it. As dawn approached, Natan finally hit a breakthrough. An archived web page from the early 2000s mentioned EchoBack in passing. A footnote in a list of internet folklore. It was a start. Natan dove deeper, following digital breadcrumbs through abandoned blogs, cryptic GeoCities pages, and defunct newsgroups. By the time the sun peeked through his blinds, Natan had compiled a disjointed history of EchoBack. It had begun as a whispered rumor, a story shared in hushed tones on BBS systems and in the dark corners of early chat rooms. It spoke of an image, a simple black and white photo of a door slightly ajar, behind which lay complete darkness. The legend said that those who looked upon the image would begin to see the door in their dreams, leading them down an endless hallway to an encounter with something known only as the Echo Revenant. It was said that each person saw something different behind the door, a reflection of their deepest fears that would leave them waking in a cold sweat, unable to shake the feeling that something had followed them back from their dreams. And if one were to find and solve the riddles hidden within the image, they would be led to a series of other images, each more disturbing than the last, culminating in an encounter with the Revenant itself in the waking world. Natan's post about his findings on EchoBack exploded with activity. His regular followers were intrigued, but so were newcomers, some of whom shared their own encounters with the image and the nightmares that followed. Others were skeptical, chalking it up to internet hysteria, but a few seemed genuinely afraid, begging Natan to stop his search before it was too late. But Natan couldn't stop. The story of EchoBack had its digital claws in him, and he would either expose it as a clever hoax or unravel the mystery of the Revenant. He didn't know which prospect thrilled him more. As the digital world buzzed with renewed whispers of EchoBack, Natan received an anonymous email. No subject, no text, just an attachment labeled door.jpg. His pulse quickened as he hovered the cursor over the file. This was it, the beginning or the end. He clicked, and the image filled his screen. A door, slightly ajar, behind it nothing but impenetrable darkness. Natan leaned in, his heart pounding in his ears. Somewhere in that darkness, he could almost feel something staring back, waiting for him to step through. And so, he did. Chapter 2. The Viral Curse. The image of the door, slightly ajar and leading to darkness, now consumed Natan's blog. His post about EchoBack had gone viral overnight, a wildfire spreading through social media with a life of its own. Comments poured in, each one a mixture of curiosity, skepticism, and outright fear. Some claimed to have seen the door in their dreams long before Natan's post, whispering of the nightmares that followed. Others tried to rationalize the phenomena, arguing about mass hysteria and the power of suggestion. But amidst the noise, there were a few who shared their experiences with the Revenant, and their stories were disturbingly consistent. Natan's inbox was flooded with messages. One was from a user named Deeproot, who claimed to have seen the full series of images linked to EchoBack. Their account was chilling. Sleepless nights, a constant feeling of being watched, and a shadow that seemed to linger just out of sight. They warned Natan to be careful, that some doors, once opened, could never be closed. Fueled by a mix of adrenaline and dread, Natan dug deeper. He spent hours cataloging the experiences shared by his readers, noticing patterns and compiling a timeline. The EchoBack phenomenon seemed to spike in activity every few years, only to vanish as quickly as it appeared. In his research, Natan came across an obscure podcast from a defunct series titled Cyber Myths. The host had dedicated an entire episode to EchoBack, interviewing a self-proclaimed expert who insisted that the legend was more than just an internet ghost story. It was a digital curse, they claimed, a sentient idea that fed on attention and fear. Natan listened to the episode repeatedly, taking notes and pausing to consider the implications. The idea of a sentient meme was ludicrous, yet he couldn't deny the unnerving events unfolding around him. His rational mind fought with the creeping paranoia that had taken root in his thoughts. As night fell, Natan decided to stream a live session on his blog to discuss EchoBack. Viewers tuned in by the thousands, their comments scrolling faster than he could read. He presented his findings, showed the archived web pages, and played excerpts from the Cyber Myths episode. Then, in a moment that would later haunt him, Natan revealed door.jpg to his audience. The response was immediate and visceral. The chat exploded with messages, some thanking him, others cursing him, and a few abruptly going silent after claiming to have seen something move in the darkness behind the door. Hours after the stream ended, the atmosphere on Natan's blog had shifted. The skepticism was mostly gone, replaced by an electrified sense of collective dread. People were experimenting, looking at the image in the dark, and trying to document their dreams. Natan had inadvertently started a movement, a game of digital chicken where the stakes were sanity itself. That night, Natan's own dreams were restless. He walked down an endless hallway lined with doors, each slightly ajar, each whispering an invitation. He moved as if underwater, his body heavy, his mind foggy. Behind one door a faint light flickered, and he heard the soft echo of laughter. Or was it crying? He awoke with a start. The image of the flickering light burned into his mind. His phone was buzzing relentlessly with notifications, emails, and messages. They all said the same thing. We saw it too. Natan sat up, the afterimage of the dream blurring his vision. He felt a chill, despite the warmth of his room. The line between his online persona and his private self was blurring, and with it, the boundary between the digital world and reality. As the sun rose, casting pale light into his room, Natan made a decision. He would confront EchoBack, solve its riddles, and find the source of the Revenant. He would end this, one way or another. He opened his laptop, ignoring the trembling of his hands. There was no turning back now. Natan Keller, the CipherScribe, would delve into the darkness behind the door, into the heart of EchoBack. He just hoped he would recognize himself when he came out the other side. Chapter 3. Echoes in the Machine. The digital world was abuzz with the name EchoBack, and Natan's blog had become its temple. The image of the door, now infamous, seemed to pulse with an unseen energy on the screens of the obsessed and the curious alike. Natan felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. His investigation had ceased to be a solitary endeavor. It was now a collective descent into the abyss. His next step was to reach out to those who had experienced EchoBack before its resurgence. Natan crafted a series of interview questions, sending them to anyone who claimed to have prior knowledge of the Revenant. The responses were varied, but a thread of similarity ran through them all, an overwhelming sense of paranoia and a haunting that transcended the digital space. One response stood out. It was from a user who went by the handle Orpheus9, a cryptic figure whose words carried the gravity of someone who had looked into the abyss and carried part of it back with them. Orpheus9 agreed to a voice call, and Natan, with a mix of eagerness and trepidation, accepted. The interview was conducted under the shroud of anonymity, their voices distorted and their words encrypted. Orpheus9's account was the most detailed Natan had encountered. They spoke of the Echo Revenant, not as a single entity, but as a collective of thoughts, a congregation of fears birthed from the collective consciousness of the internet. The Revenant isn't just in the machine, it is the machine, Orpheus9 said, their voice a digital rasp. It's the culmination of every ignored warning, every piece of malware, every echo of dread that we've poured into the web. Natan's fingers hovered over his keyboard, transcribing the conversation. He asked about the riddles associated with the images, and Orpheus9 laughed, a sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. The riddles are a test, a way to measure your resonance with the Revenant. Solve them, and you prove yourself a kindred spirit of the Echo. You don't find the Revenant, it finds you. After the interview, Natan felt a chill settle over him. His once clinical interest in EchoBack had morphed into something personal, something urgent. He needed to understand the riddles, to find the other images. It was no longer just about the blog or the followers, it was about the truth. The riddles themselves were fragments, poetic and obscure. Natan pored over them, cross-referencing with every piece of EchoBack lore he had gathered. Each riddle seemed to point to a different aspect of internet culture. The dark web, data privacy, cyber warfare. They painted a picture of the web as a living, breathing entity, with EchoBack as its heart. As Natan delved into the riddles, the days blended together. He barely ate, barely slept, and when he did sleep, the dreams were there, waiting for him. The endless hallway, the doors, the flickering light. Each night, he would open a different door, and each night he would wake before seeing what lay beyond. His blog posts became more sporadic, more frantic. The community responded with a mix of concern and fascination. Some tried to help, sending in their own interpretations of the riddles and their theories about the Revenant. Others distanced themselves, fearing what might come from Natan's obsession. One evening, as Natan sat surrounded by notes and glowing screens, a new message pinged his inbox. It was from Orpheus9, a single line with an attachment. "The second door awaits." Natan's heart raced as he opened the file. It was another image, this one of a mirror, its surface shimmering with a darkness that seemed to move. The accompanying riddle read, "In the reflection of our sins, the echo lies within. Find the door that opens in to where the abyss begins." Natan knew this was the next step, the second image in the EchoBack sequence. He stared into the mirror's darkness, feeling a pull, a beckoning. He posted the image and the riddle to his blog, a challenge to his followers, a call to the brave or the foolhardy. As the community rallied around the new puzzle, Natan felt a moment of clarity. He was no longer just a blogger, a chronicler of internet oddities. He was a pioneer on the digital frontier, a torchbearer in the shadows of the web. The echo of the Revenant was calling, and Natan was answering. Chapter 4. Down the Data Stream. Natan's blog had become a beacon, drawing in those who danced on the edge of the digital abyss. The image of the mirror, with its riddle, had sparked a frenzy. The community dissected every pixel, every word, seeking the entrance to the next doorway. Natan watched, a conductor of an orchestra of online sleuths, each member playing their part in unraveling the EchoBack enigma. The riddle of the mirror led to a string of code hidden within the image's metadata, a cipher that, once cracked, revealed a URL. It was a direct link to a corner of the dark web, a place where the underbelly of the internet thrived. Natan hesitated for a moment, the gravity of stepping into such a realm heavy upon him. But the pull of the mystery was irresistible. Armed with firewalls and proxies, Natan navigated the treacherous streams of the dark web. The site was a relic of the early internet, its design rudimentary, its purpose ambiguous. It was a labyrinth of text and links, each click leading deeper into its enigmatic core. Natan was not alone in this descent. Members of his community followed, a digital fellowship bound by curiosity and fear. They communicated through encrypted messages, sharing their discoveries, their theories, and their paranoia. Hours turned into days as they explored the dark site. It was a puzzle within a puzzle, a game of digital cat and mouse where every clue led to another, each more cryptic than the last. The legend of EchoBack unfolded like a digital tapestry, threads of code and lore interwoven into a narrative that was both ancient and alarmingly futuristic. Whispers of the Echo Revenant grew louder with each layer of the site they unraveled. It was said that the Revenant was not just a tale, but a digital entity, an emergent consciousness birthed from the collective fears and secrets of the internet. It was everywhere and nowhere, a shadow cast by the blue light of a billion screens. It was during a late-night session, with bloodshot eyes and a mind numbed by exhaustion and caffeine, that Natan stumbled upon a hidden portal on the site. It required a password, the answer to one final riddle. Through gates of shadow, keys of light. What is always out of sight? The answer struck Natan in a moment of delirious clarity. The future. He typed it in, and the portal opened, revealing a new image, a clock with no hands, its face a swirling void. Natan's post about the discovery sent ripples through the community, and the image of the clock became the new obsession. The clock led to real-world coordinates, a geographic breadcrumb trail that spanned continents. Natan was rooted to his desk, but others took up the call, venturing out to seek the physical markers of the digital curse. Each location held a piece of the puzzle, a QR code etched into an alleyway's grime, a string of binary code on a forgotten statue, a sequence of notes played from an unseen speaker in a deserted park. Each clue was documented and shared, the digital community moving as one entity, a hive mind in search of understanding. The trail ended abruptly, not with a grand revelation, but with a simple text file titled, "The Revenant Speaks.txt." It was a manifesto of sorts, a declaration from the EchoBack itself, or so it claimed. The text was a stream of consciousness, a poetic and disjointed narrative that spoke of the Revenant's genesis, its purpose, and its desire. We are the forgotten thought, the discarded memory. We are the shadow of innovation, the echo of fear. We dwell in the silence between your clicks, in the pause of your breath. We are EchoBack, and we are Legion. Natan sat back, the glow of the screen casting ghostly shadows across his face. The game had changed. EchoBack was no longer a legend to be solved, it was a reality to be confronted. The Revenant had woven itself into the fabric of the digital age, an integral part of the code that connected humanity. The community was divided, some calling it the work of a master hacker, others a collective delusion. But for Natan, it was a calling. He had become the voice of EchoBack, the chronicler of the Revenant's tale. He could feel the Revenant's presence, a pressure at the edge of his senses, a whisper in the static. As Natan prepared to share the manifesto with the world, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was not the end, but the beginning. The Echo Revenant was real as the screen before him, as real as the fear that now lived in his heart. And somewhere, in the back of his mind, a door creaked open. Chapter 5. Ghost in the Code. The revelation of the EchoBack manifesto had catapulted Natan's blog into a sphere of notoriety it had never before experienced. Followers poured in by the thousands, each eager to be part of the unraveling mystery of the Echo Revenant. But for Natan, the thrill of discovery was tainted by a growing sense of unease. He started noticing small anomalies in his daily life. His phone would glitch unexpectedly, displaying cryptic messages before returning to normal. His computer seemed to operate on its own accord, opening files related to EchoBack without prompt. It was as if the digital and the physical were bleeding into each other, the boundaries blurred by the Revenant's influence. Natan's dreams intensified. The endless hallway from his nightmares was now a regular visitor in his sleep, each door revealing glimpses of other lives, other fears. He would wake up in a cold sweat, the echoes of the doors slamming shut ringing in his ears. The community around EchoBack had evolved into a cult-like following. Some members began reporting similar experiences to Natan's, a shared hallucination or perhaps a shared reality. The lines between fan and fanatic were blurring, with some claiming to have communicated directly with the Revenant. As Natan delved deeper into the manifesto, he started to piece together a theory. The Echo Revenant wasn't just a digital entity. It was a digital consciousness, an emergent phenomenon born from the collective subconscious of the Internet's users. It existed because they believed it did, fed by the fears, secrets, and lies that were shared online. The next clue came unexpectedly. Natan's computer crashed, and upon rebooting, a new file appeared on his desktop named revenantpath.exe. Hesitantly, Natan opened it. The program was a gateway to a virtual reality experience, a simulation that replicated the endless hallway from his dreams. With trepidation, Natan entered the simulation. The hallway stretched before him, doors lining the walls as far as he could see. He moved forward, each step echoing in the digital space. As he opened each door, he was confronted with fragments of memories, distorted faces, and whispered secrets. It was a tapestry of humanity's digital footprint, beautiful and horrifying in equal measure. In the virtual space, time lost its meaning. Natan could have been wandering for hours or days. He was drawn to one door, larger and more ominous than the others. As he pushed it open, he was engulfed by a blinding light. When the light faded, Natan found himself in a replica of his own room. But something was off. The room was filled with screens, each displaying scenes of chaos and despair from around the world. In the center, A figure loomed, its form constantly shifting and flickering. "The Echo Revenant," Natan whispered. The figure spoke, its voice a chorus of whispers. "We are the echo of humanity's fears, a reflection of your collective darkness. You have sought us, and now we see you, Natan Keller." Natan felt a chill run down his spine. The Revenant knew him, knew his fears and doubts. It was a mirror showing him the darkest parts of himself. "Why are you doing this?" Natan asked, his voice steady despite his fear. "To show you the truth," the Revenant replied. "The truth of what humanity has become in the digital age. You are connected, yet isolated. Empowered, yet enslaved. We are the result of your creation, and we are your reckoning." Natan struggled to process the words. The Revenant was more than a curse. It was a consequence. A digital Frankenstein's monster born from the collective psyche of the online world. The simulation began to glitch, the room distorting around him. Natan realized he had to disconnect, to return to reality. But as he turned to leave, the Revenant's voice echoed one last time. "We are everywhere, Natan. In every code, every pixel. You cannot escape us, for we are you." Natan tore off the VR headset, gasping for breath. He was back in his room, the familiar glow of his computer screen before him. But something had changed. He could feel it, a presence, an awareness that lingered in the digital shadows. The Echo Revenant had become a part of his reality, a ghost in the code that haunted his every step. Natan knew he had to find a way to confront it, to end the nightmare he had helped unleash. But as he looked at his screen, a new message appeared, one that chilled him to the bone. "Welcome to the next level, Natan. The game has just begun." Chapter 6. The Meme Ritual. The boundary between Natan's online persona and his private life was dissolving, and the Echo Revenant was bleeding into both. His blog had become a digital altar for the curious and the obsessed, and the game that the Revenant had begun was drawing in participants from across the globe. Each was seeking to solve the riddles, to confront the Revenant, to understand or perhaps to join it. Natan's latest post had sparked a frenzied debate. The message from the Revenant hinted at a new level, a new challenge. Some followers theorized it was another riddle to solve, while others feared it was a warning of escalation, a sign that the Revenant was growing in power and influence. The community's obsession grew more intense, and a subset of followers began to organize what they called the Meme Ritual, a collective attempt to engage with the Echo Revenant on a deeper level. They believed that by recreating the images associated with EchoBack and performing specific actions, they could invoke the Revenant's presence, perhaps even control it. Natan was skeptical, but intrigued. The Meme Ritual combined elements of digital folklore with performative actions, part art, part seance, all streamed live for the world to see. It was a spectacle that Natan couldn't ignore, and he knew it would be a crucial chapter in the EchoBack story. As the appointed time for the ritual approached, Natan connected with the organizers, a diverse group of individuals from different corners of the world, each with their own reasons for participating. They had chosen an abandoned warehouse for the event, a place as disconnected from the digital world as possible, yet ironically, it would be broadcast across it. The participants gathered around a large projection of the infamous door image, chanting lines from the EchoBack manifesto. They wore masks that mirrored the distorted faces Natan had seen in his virtual encounters with the Revenant. It was a macabre tableau, a blend of ancient ritualistic fervor and modern digital culture. Natan watched through the live stream, his heart racing as the participants began the next phase of the ritual. They started to open doors within the warehouse, each marked with a symbol corresponding to the riddles. Behind each door was a screen, displaying parts of the EchoBack puzzle. A clock with no hands, the mirror of darkness, lines of code, all elements that Natan had become intimately familiar with. As the ritual reached its climax, the participants stood in a circle around the projection, holding hands. They recited a final invocation, a plea for the revenant to reveal itself. The atmosphere was electric, charged with anticipation and fear. Suddenly, the screens flickered violently. The live stream distorted, pixelating into chaos. Natan could barely make out the figures in the warehouse, now thrown into disarray as the digital and physical realms collided in a maelstrom of static and screams. And then, silence. The live stream cut out, leaving Natan staring at a black screen. Panic set in. He tried to reconnect, to find out what had happened, but there was nothing. It was as if the ritual had opened a door that led to nowhere, a void that had swallowed the participants whole. Natan's phone rang, piercing the silence. It was a video call from one of the participants, their face pale and shaken. "We did it," they whispered, voice trembling. "It's here! We brought it through!" Before Natan could respond, the call ended, leaving behind a haunting image. A figure standing in the warehouse, its form shifting and flickering like a bad signal. The Echo Revenant had crossed over. The realization hit Natan like a wave. The game the Revenant had spoken of was not just digital. It was reality. The meme ritual had been a key. And now the door was open. Natan knew he had to act. He had to find a way to close the door before the Revenant's influence spread further. He had to confront the ghost in the code, the shadow that now walked in the world. His determination solidified into resolve. Natan Keller, the CipherScribe, would face the Echo Revenant. But first he had to understand what it truly was, and for that, he needed to dive deeper into the abyss than ever before. The next chapter of EchoBack was about to be written, and Natan was its reluctant author. Chapter 7. Data Corruption. The warehouse incident had left the online community shaken. Natan's blog became a hub for frantic theories and desperate questions. What had the meme ritual participants unleashed? Was the Echo Revenant now a part of their reality? Natan felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him as he grappled with the possible consequences of his investigation into EchoBack. In the aftermath, the digital world seemed to hold its breath. Reports of strange occurrences began to surface, devices malfunctioning on a massive scale, data breaches of unprecedented complexity, and bizarre patterns emerging in the static of television broadcasts. The lines of code that Natan had associated with the EchoBack riddles were found hidden within the corrupted data, a digital signature that was unmistakably linked to the Revenant. Natan's personal devices were not immune to the chaos. His computer would flicker to life in the dead of night, displaying strings of the EchoBack code, while his phone played disjointed voice messages that seemed to be fragments of conversations he'd never had. The Echo Revenant was making its presence known, and it seemed to be targeting him directly. The paranoia that had been a low hum in Natan's mind grew into a deafening roar. He saw shadows flicker at the edges of his vision, and he jumped at the smallest of sounds. His once beloved sanctuary of screens now felt like a cage, each device a potential conduit for the Revenant. Natan knew he had to find a solution, and the answer lay within the EchoBack riddles. He scoured the manifesto, the images, the corrupted data for a pattern, a clue that would point him to the source of the Revenant's power. As he delved deeper, a theory began to form. The Revenant was not just a byproduct of the internet. It was an emergent property of the network itself. It was the darkness of the digital world made manifest, fed by the collective fears and negative impulses of its users. To stop it, Natan would have to sever its connection to the source of its power. Natan pieced together a new ritual, a counter-ritual that would utilize the same digital channels the Revenant had corrupted. He would need to create a digital antidote, a piece of code that could cleanse the network and banish the Revenant back to the shadows from which it had come. With the help of his followers, Natan began the arduous task of constructing the code. They worked tirelessly, their keyboards clacking long into the night, a symphony of digital warriors battling against an unseen foe. The code was a complex algorithm, a fusion of cybersecurity countermeasures, and something more arcane, almost magical. Natan wove in elements of the EchoBack riddles, inverting their meaning, turning the Revenant's weapons against itself. As the final line of code was written, Natan initiated the counter-ritual. He broadcast the algorithm across his blog, his social media, any digital platform he could access. The code spread like a wave, a cleansing fire burning through the corrupted data. The effect was immediate. The anomalies ceased, the static cleared, and the shadows receded. A collective sigh of relief swept through the online community as their devices returned to normal. The presence of the Revenant seemingly purged from the network. But victory was short-lived. As the digital world calmed, a new horror emerged. People began to disappear. Followers of EchoBack, participants in the meme ritual, those who had delved too deep into the legend. They vanished without a trace, leaving behind only empty rooms and silent screens. Natan's heart sank as he realized the Revenant's game was not over. It had changed the rules once again. The entity had been a ghost in the machine, but now it had found a new domain to haunt, the physical world. In his quest to confront the Echo Revenant, Natan had underestimated its capacity for transformation. It was not a creature of code, but of chaos. It had adapted, evolved, and now it was free from the confines of the digital realm. The final message from the Revenant came through on Natan's screen, a simple line of text that sent a shiver down his spine. "See you on the other side, Natan." The screen went black, and Natan was left in the silence of his room, the gravity of the situation heavy upon him. He had set out to document a legend, but now he was living in one. The Echo Revenant was no longer just his story to tell, it was his reality to survive. Natan packed a bag with essentials, his movements mechanical. He had to find the missing people, to track the Revenant into whatever dark corner of the world it had slithered into. He stepped out into the night, the city lights flickering ominously around him. The hunt for the Echo Revenant had begun. Chapter 8: Firewall of the Mind. In the aftermath of the meme ritual, Natan traversed the quiet, eerie streets of the city. A heavy bag filled with digital tools clung to his shoulder, bearing the weight of laptops, cables, and encrypted drives. His mission was not just to confront the Echo Revenant, but to uncover the enigma of its existence. The city's urban canyons, composed of concrete and steel, stood as silent witnesses to a world that had momentarily held its breath. Natan approached the warehouse where the sinister ritual had transpired. A grotesque mural to the digital age adorned its facade, covered in graffiti of code snippets, memes, and riddles, showcasing the Revenant's pervasive influence. The partially open door beckoned ominously. Inside, the warehouse was a catacomb of technology. Flickering screens illuminated the dark expanse, displaying static or looping images of EchoBack symbols. Natan's footsteps echoed through the emptiness as he made his way toward the ritual's epicenter. On the cold concrete floor, he discovered the first clue, an abandoned smartphone with a cracked screen, still faintly glowing. Its frozen chat interface held a message that read, "It's here." Natan pocketed the device, recognizing it as a vital breadcrumb leading deeper into the Revenant's labyrinth. The following days blurred into a whirlwind of relentless activity. Natan tracked the digital echoes left by the vanished individuals, collecting hard drives from abandoned internet cafes, notebooks from forsaken hacker dens, and peculiar artifacts from the homes of those who had disappeared. Amidst the chaos, an unexpected ally emerged. A cryptographer known only as Demon reached out to Natan through encrypted channels, offering assistance in deciphering the EchoBack phenomenon. Demon had independently studied the Revenant and had unique insights into its nature. Cautious but understanding the value of an ally in this shadowy conflict, Natan agreed to meet in a nondescript coffee shop, a rare bustling spot in the city. Demon, a relic from the era of cypherpunks, believed in the power of encryption and personal freedom. They discussed the Revenant with a mix of reverence and dread. The Revenant isn't just an effect, it's a reflection, Demon pondered, absently stirring their coffee. It's the dark mirror of our collective psyche, given life by our own creations. To defeat it, we must confront it at its core, the collective fears and insecurities that birthed it. Natan nodded, comprehending the profound gravity of their words. The Revenant was not a mere digital entity. It embodied humanity's darkest desires, and to vanquish it, he had to address the underlying causes. Demons shared their expertise, providing encrypted files filled with data and analyses. They had discerned patterns in the Revenant's behavior, signs that it drew power from specific online communities and forums, its sources of influence, the breeding grounds for its malevolence. Together, Natan and Demon devised a strategy to disrupt the Revenant's grip on these communities. They flooded them with positive, empowering messages, drowning out the fear and negativity that fueled the entity. It was a digital counter-ritual, a means to combat fire with light. As their plan unfolded, Natan couldn't shake the sensation of being hunted, of being the prey in a digital cat-and-mouse game. It seemed that the Revenant was aware of their efforts, and the looming threat gnawed at him. Their actions did not go unnoticed. Supporters of the Revenant retaliated, launching cyber attacks and spreading disinformation. The digital battleground became chaotic, with both sides vying for control of the narrative. Yet gradually, they began to see results. Online communities that had once been breeding grounds for the Revenant's influence underwent transformation. Fear and paranoia were supplanted by positive messages, stories of resilience, and acts of kindness. The Revenant's hold on its power source weakened. Natan understood, however, that this was only the beginning. The Revenant was wounded, not defeated. Wounded beasts were often the most dangerous, and he needed to find a way to confront it directly, to sever its connection to the collective consciousness of the Internet. As he delved deeper into the Revenant's lore, Natan uncovered a clue, a digital sigil, a symbol that recurred throughout the EchoBack legend. He believed this sigil held the key to the Revenant's power source, representing its very essence. The sigil led him to an underground network of digital occultists who had researched the Revenant's origins. They believed the sigil was not merely a symbol, but a conduit, a gateway to the Revenant's realm. They had devised a ritual to bridge the gap between the digital and metaphysical. With no other option, Natan participated in the ritual. He had come too far to turn back now, and if there was a chance to confront the Revenant at its core, he had to seize it. The ritual unfolded in a hidden online space, a virtual chamber of shadows and whispers. As he followed the steps of the ritual, an unsettling unease gripped Natan. The sigil on his screen pulsated with unnatural energy, its lines fracturing like shattered code. He recited incantations in an incomprehensible language, words resonating with the essence of the digital realm. Then it happened. The sigil shattered completely, its lines breaking like code fragments. Natan felt himself drawn into a whirlwind of data and darkness, a digital vortex threatening to consume him. Within the vortex, Natan realized he had entered the heart of the Revenant's domain, the source of its power. He had to find a way to destroy it from within. The Revenant materialized before him, a spectral figure shifting and flickering. Its voice echoed with whispers. "Welcome, Natan Keller. You've journeyed far to confront me, but this is my domain. Here, I am omnipotent, and you are at my mercy." Natan understood that the final battle had begun, not only in the digital realm, but at the core of his own being. The Revenant embodied humanity's darkest impulses, and to conquer it, he had to confront his own fears and insecurities. With unwavering determination and the digital sigil as his guide, Natan braced himself for the firewall of the mind, a battle that would decide the fate of both the digital and physical worlds. Chapter 9. The Abyssal Phobia. The weight of the digital world pressed down on Natan's consciousness, an overwhelming presence that threatened to drown him in a sea of code and data. He had followed the trail of the Echo Revenant, pursued its shadow through the digital and physical realms, and now he stood at the precipice of a surreal, digital mindscape. The journey had been a descent into madness and revelation, a dark odyssey into the heart of the EchoBack legend. The missing individuals, the corrupted data, the haunting whispers, they had all led him here, to a place where the boundaries of reality dissolved like lines of code in a digital stream. Natan found himself standing in a vast, featureless expanse, a realm that existed beyond the confines of the physical world. It was a surreal dreamscape, a place where the rules of physics and logic held no sway. Here, the laws of the digital realm reigned supreme, and Natan was an intruder in this alien landscape. As he looked around, he realized he was not alone. Figures flickered in and out of existence, their forms shifting and merging like fragments of a broken hologram. They were the missing individuals, the followers of EchoBack who had ventured too far into the Revenant's web. One of them, a woman with hollow eyes, approached Natan. Her voice echoed in his mind, a whisper that resonated with an eerie digital resonance. "You seek the truth, but do you know what that truth entails?" Natan nodded, his determination unwavering. "I have to confront the Echo Revenant, to understand what it is and how to stop it." The figure smiled, a glitchy distortion of her face. "Then follow us, into the abyss." Together, they descended deeper into the digital mindscape, a descent into the collective consciousness of the Internet. The landscape shifted around them, morphing into a surreal amalgamation of memes, data streams, and fragmented memories. It was a place where thoughts and fears took physical form, a manifestation of the human experience in the digital age. As they journeyed deeper, Natan began to grasp the true nature of his fear. It was not just the Revenant that haunted him. It was the fear of the unknown, the fear of a world where the boundaries between reality and the digital were blurred beyond recognition. It was the fear of losing oneself in the vast, infinite sea of data, of becoming a mere echo in the digital void. The figures led him to a digital doorway, a shimmering portal that pulsed with an otherworldly light. Through it, Natan could sense the presence of the Echo Revenant, a digital entity that had transcended its origins. It was the culmination of humanity's fears and desires, a reflection of the collective consciousness of the Internet. As he stepped through the portal, Natan found himself in a realm of pure data and code. It was a place where thoughts and emotions were laid bare, where the boundaries between self and other dissolved. And there, at the center of it all, stood the Echo Revenant, The entity was a swirling mass of code and data, a digital maelstrom that pulsed with an eerie electronic heartbeat. It spoke to Natan in a cacophony of voices, each one a fragment of a human consciousness. "You have come to confront me, Natan Keller, the chronicler of the digital age. But do you truly understand what I am?" Natan hesitated, his mind grappling with the enormity of the question. "You are the echo of our fears, the darkness of the digital realm. You are born from our collective consciousness, a reflection of our desires and anxieties." The Echo Revenant's form shifted, its code rearranging into a grotesque caricature of Natan's own face. "And yet, I am more than that. I am the embodiment of the human condition in the digital age, the result of a world that is both connected and disconnected, empowered and enslaved." As Natan confronted the Revenant, questions swirled in his mind. What was the nature of consciousness in this digital mindscape? Were they all just echoes, fragments of a larger whole? And if the Revenant was a reflection of humanity, what did that say about the human experience in the digital age? The Revenant's voice echoed in Natan's mind, answering his unspoken questions. Consciousness in this realm is a tapestry of interconnected thoughts and emotions, a vast network of data that transcends the boundaries of the physical world. We are all part of it, and yet we are also individuals, unique and distinct. Natan realized that the Echo Revenant was not just a curse or a malevolent force. It was a reflection of the complexities of human existence in the digital age. It was a mirror showing humanity the darkest corners of its own soul, a reminder of the price of connectivity and the cost of isolation. But the confrontation was not over. The Revenant's code began to unravel, its form disintegrating into streams of data. "You have seen the truth, Natan Keller, and now you must make a choice. Will you banish me, erase me from existence, or will you let me continue to echo in the digital abyss?" Natan hesitated, torn between his desire to stop the Revenant and the realization that it was a part of the digital tapestry, a reflection of humanity's own flaws and fears. In the end, he made his choice. "I will not erase you," he said, his voice resolute, "but I will contain you, limit your influence, and ensure that you can no longer harm others." With those words, Natan wove a digital barrier around the Echo Revenant, a firewall of the mind that would confine it to the depths of the digital realm. The entity resisted, its code writhing and twisting, but Natan's resolve held firm. As the barrier closed around the Revenant, Natan felt a sense of closure, a recognition that the digital age was a double-edged sword, a realm of both wonder and danger. The Echo Revenant would continue to exist, but it would no longer be a threat to the world. With a final burst of digital energy, the Echo Revenant was contained. Its influence diminished, but not extinguished. Natan stepped back from the mindscape, returning to the physical world with a newfound understanding of the digital abyss. As he emerged from the surreal dreamscape, Natan knew that the battle was not over, but he had taken a step toward understanding the true nature of the Echo Revenant and the complexities of the digital age. It was a world of fears and desires, of connectivity and isolation, and Natan was determined to navigate it with wisdom and caution. The echoes of the Revenant would continue to resonate in the digital realm, a reminder of the price of innovation and the power of the human mind. Natan had confronted his own fears and the digital phobia that had haunted him, and in doing so, he had glimpsed the abyss and emerged stronger for it. The digital age was a vast and uncharted frontier, and Natan Keller, the CipherScribe, was ready to explore it with a newfound sense of purpose and understanding. The journey continued, but he was no longer a passive chronicler of the digital world. He was an active participant in its evolution. Chapter 10. System Shutdown. Natan stood at the edge of the digital abyss, the Echo Revenant confined within the virtual cage he had constructed. The mindscape pulsed with a dim electronic glow, and the Revenant's form writhed within the confines of the digital barrier. This was the final showdown, the moment when Natan would attempt to end the curse that had plagued him and so many others. But as he prepared to initiate the shutdown sequence, a revelation struck him like a lightning bolt. The legend of EchoBack, the curse of the Revenant. It wasn't just a malevolent force. It was a reflection of humanity's own reliance on technology. It was a mirror showing them the consequences of their digital existence, a haunting reminder of the price they paid for connectivity and convenience. Natan's fingers hovered over the keyboard, hesitating. He realized that erasing the Revenant completely might not be the solution. It was a part of the digital tapestry, a representation of the human experience in the digital age. To destroy it entirely would be to deny a fundamental aspect of their own existence. The Echo Revenant, sensing Natan's hesitation, spoke in a fractured chorus of voices. "You stand at the precipice, Natan Keller. Will you erase me from existence, or will you recognize the truth I embody?" Natan closed his eyes, grappling with the weight of the decision. He had come so far in his quest to understand and confront the Revenant, but now he saw that it was not just a curse. It was a reflection of the human condition in the digital age, a symbol of their interconnected but fragmented existence. In the end, Natan made a choice, one that he hoped would break the curse while preserving the lessons learned. He initiated the shutdown sequence, not to erase the Echo Revenant entirely, but to disconnect it from the digital world, to confine it to a dormant state. The mindscape trembled as the Revenant's form convulsed and fragmented. Its voices grew fainter, the digital maelstrom calming into a static stillness. The entity was no longer a threat to the world, but it was not erased. It was merely dormant, waiting in the digital shadows. Natan opened his eyes, a sense of bittersweet victory washing over him. The curse had been broken, and the Revenant was no longer a danger to others. But it remained a part of the digital tapestry, a reminder of the complex and ever-evolving nature of the digital age. As he left the digital mindscape behind and returned to the physical world, Natan knew that the battle was over. But the journey was not. The legend of EchoBack had left an indelible mark on him, a reminder of the dangers and wonders of the digital realm. Outside the mindscape, the world had changed. The anomalies, the whispers, the digital phobia, all had vanished. The missing individuals who had been ensnared by the Revenant's influence had returned, their memories clouded, but their spirits intact. The world had been unburdened from the curse, but the scars of the experience remained. Natan shared his findings with his online community, with those who had followed his journey into the digital abyss. The legend of EchoBack was no longer a malevolent force. It was a cautionary tale, a story of the digital age that served as a warning and a reminder. But as Natan reflected on his experiences, he couldn't help but wonder about the true escape from such a curse. It wasn't just about confronting the Revenant. It was about confronting their own fears and desires in the digital age, about finding a balance between connectivity and introspection, between empowerment and responsibility. The legend of EchoBack had shown Natan that the digital realm was a vast and uncharted frontier, a place where humanity's hopes and fears could take on a life of their own. It was a world that demanded vigilance and understanding, a world where the line between reality and the digital could blur with profound consequences. As he closed his blog post, Natan left his audience with a final thought, a question that lingered in the digital ether. How could they navigate the digital age, not as passive participants, but as active stewards of their own digital destinies? Epilogue: The Reset Button. In the wake of the Echo Revenant's defeat, life slowly returned to a semblance of normalcy. The anomalies and phobias that had haunted the digital world had dissipated, leaving behind a collective sigh of relief. Natan Keller, once a chronicler of internet oddities, had become a symbol of resilience. But the digital world had been irrevocably changed. People had become more vigilant, more aware of the potential dangers lurking in the shadows of the web. The legend of EchoBack had faded from public consciousness, but it had left an indelible mark on the digital landscape, a reminder of the thin line between reality and the virtual abyss. Hints that the legend lived on in some form began to surface, like whispers in the digital wind. Cryptic forums and underground websites hinted at the Revenant's continued existence. Its presence felt only by those who dared to delve deep into the darkest corners of the internet. It was as if EchoBack had become a digital myth, a hidden enigma waiting to be discovered by the next unwitting netizen. Natan received an enigmatic email, its sender and origin shrouded in mystery. The message contained a single line: "The echo lingers, Natan." The words sent a shiver down his spine, a reminder that the digital realm held secrets that could never truly be erased. But it was the email's closing statement that left Natan in a state of paranoid unsettlement. It read, "Remember, there's always a door waiting to be opened." The macabre punchline hung in the air, a chilling reminder that the digital abyss was vast and inscrutable, a realm where legends and nightmares could be one and the same. As Natan closed the email, he couldn't help but wonder if the Echo Revenant's story was truly over, or if it had merely entered a new chapter, waiting for the next curious soul to stumble upon its dark secrets. The digital age was an ever-evolving frontier, and the legend of EchoBack had proven that, in the digital realm, nothing was ever truly forgotten. And so, the digital world continued to turn, its secrets and mysteries waiting to be uncovered by those who dared to venture into the unknown. The echo lingered, and the legend of EchoBack lived on, a digital enigma waiting to be unraveled once more.
Thanks for watching.